Who doesn't love Tim Burton? I have loved his films since I was stomping around in the Cretaceous period, and I wanted to know though, do these films hold up? I went back and rewatched every single Tim Burton film, and I'm going to put them into a tier list for your convenient pleasure. I spent my precious free time watching all of these bangers because Timmy just keeps pumping these bad boys out, and I'm going to try to keep this video somewhat shorter because college is starting back up and I'm not one of those YouTubers who has enough time to dedicate a 4-hour video to Frankenweenie. So here's every Tim Burton movie reviewed and ranked, and without wasting any more time, let's get into Tim Burton's first film. Tim Burton's directorial debut is Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and if you haven't seen this film, do yourself a favor, watch the rest of this video, of course, and then go watch Pee-wee's Big Adventure because this is one of the funniest movies, and that's because it relies consistently on visual gags. It feels really akin to a film like Airplane, where it just keeps hitting you over the head with new and creative jokes, and it never gives you a second to breathe. I would say this is the funniest film Tim Burton's ever made, but that'd be a knock on how good Tim Burton is at directing comedy. This film very early on shows Tim's ability and great understanding of the usage of production design, visual humor, and lovable characters that power us through a silly and hilarious world. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is absolutely great and deserves easily A tier. And going right next to it in A tier is Beetlejuice. Can you believe a film as culturally significant and well-standing as Beetlejuice is just the second full-length feature by Tim? It's genuinely insane. And this is where we get to see his creature and costume design beginning to infiltrate his comedy. Once again, we have top-class world building and production design with a hilarious cast that will knock you dead. Moving on. This is one of the funniest films due to one of our greatest actors, Chick Hicks, giving a fantastic lead performance. Oh yeah, and did I forget to mention this film's just absolutely hilarious? This is truly a timeless film and holds up just as well today as it did back then. So, as we already said, it's in the A tier. I will move it slightly ahead of Pee-wee's Big Adventure because it makes me laugh more, but you know who makes me laugh the most? The Crown Prince of Crime. The LA Lakers fan himself, Jonkler. And of course, that's the next film we're talking about, Batman. I've already talked about Batman in 1989 a lot on this channel, even my old ranking video of all the Batman movies. The section I recorded for Batman 89 ended up getting the audio corrupted, and because the quality control on this channel is so good, you can still watch that video. I have not taken it down, so hopefully let me clear it up. I really like Man 89. I don't love it. I think it's a decent enough adaptation. It's got an incredible atmosphere that hangs over the city and world, two great performances from Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, but for me it leaves a little bit to be desired for the Batman character because I am a huge Batman nerd. There isn't any real conflict at the center of this film due to Joker just doing shenanigans and whatever he wants, while Batman desperately thirsts over Vicky Vale. It's not terrible, it just isn't really exciting with its main story, but it still is a fun, if not a little flawed version of the Caped Crusader, but a great intro to him on the silver screen after Adam West. Not that there's anything wrong with Adam West, let's make that clear, I love that man. But Batman 89 is fun, and it gave us the greatest soundtrack to any Batman movie ever, and the soundtrack to the best Batman game ever. So how could I put Batman anywhere lower than B tier? And while we're on the subject, let's talk about Man Returns. This movie I actually like more, and I know it's not the most popular take, and the reason I like it more honestly is all because of the style of the film. It's more bloated in some places, it's got insane and goofy performances from all three of our leads, and it's more goth, and it's more violent. Also, it has Danny DeVito doing the most inappropriate jokes ever for a PG-13 movie, and Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie did irreversible damage to my 13-year-old brain when I first saw this movie. So all of that combined, along with the Christmas time that the movie is set at, A tier for Batman Returns, don't even. Now let's get back on track. I need to cut this video somewhat down to a reasonable length, and for that I would call it my buddy Edward Scissorhands. Now, is this my favorite Tim Burton film? No, but I think it's great, and I think it's the first film where we truly got to see full-on Tim Burton style. The way he visually puts the film together is astounding, with the perfectly kept neighborhood juxtaposed with the house on the mountain. This is a film all about polar opposites. And it focuses on the differences that can push people apart, but also the love at the center of humanity that can draw all of us weirdos together. Edward Scissorhands is a film that I would call a tragic fairy tale. The film at times can feel unnecessarily cruel, but it is still a film about outcasts and love at its center. And that creates a film that resonates so much with many people, me included. I think Edward Scissorhands is great. A tier. The craziest part of a film that is as great as Edward Scissorhands is that it's not even my favorite Tim Burton film with the name Ed in it. So let's talk about maybe my favorite film in Tim Burton's entire filmography, Ed Wood. Ed Wood, I think, is the most empathetic film Tim Burton has ever made. It's a story about the real-life B-movie director and his story on how he got started in Hollywood to his grand opus being made, Plan 9 from Outer Space. For a film that's about such a tragic figure, and especially his actors he worked with like Bela Lugosi, it's a film with so much heart. It doesn't treat these people like fools to be mocked, rather they are shown as hopeless romantics for cinema that tried their best. It's a beautiful ode to filmmaking, and if you love films like Babylon, this is an incredible film you will love, especially if it flew under your radar. Tim Burton never gets recognized enough for how much heart is in his films, and Ed Wood is one of the most powerful and funny films I've ever seen. I adore Ed Wood, it might be my favorite Tim Burton film, but we're gonna have to see. But for now, S tier. After his insane run of darker films, Tim Burton decided it was time to make his great comedy. His critique of society, his version of Doctor Strangelove, and that ends up being the bizarre comedy Mars Attacks. And it's a film that kinda works. But I don't think it's a great Tim Burton movie, but I don't think it's really bad. Its main story is just an excuse for a bunch of gags, and the characters are completely one-dimensional, but the film is characterized by performances that are so fun and stupid funny aliens, that it makes it really a hard film to really not have a good time with. And how bad can a Jack Nicholson movie be? I'll throw this at the bottom of B tier. But dim the lights for the greatest Halloween film maybe ever. Fire up your oven, call your mom for a pumpkin bread recipe, because we're going to be talking about my favorite film Tim Burton's ever made. And this time I mean it. And there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce it better than Christopher Lee, so take it away.
Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow focuses on Ichabod Crane as he heads to the remote town of Sleepy Hollow, with its supernatural occurrences that have cursed this small town. This is a gothic banger. It has incredible set pieces, a great cast, and most of all, a film dripping with atmosphere. This is a film where its style is going to be the sole reason whether you like it or not, kind of like Batman Returns. But for me, this is exactly what I want. An R-rated Halloween gothic movie that feels so cozy to watch. I love this movie, and it's my favorite Tim Burton movie for completely personal reasons, because I just love the Headless Horseman. Throw it at the top of S tier. I love Halloween. Alright Timmy, what movie you got next? Oh, I've actually already talked about the Planet of the Apes reboot in this video, so if you want to know my opinion, it's in there, and no, my opinion hasn't really changed. It's not the worst Planet of the Apes movie, but yeah, it's down there, and for Tim, it's a big ol' stain on his filmography. Anyway, Mark Wahlberg kisses a monkey, and that keeps it out of F tier, but not by much, D tier. But hey, there's always a bigger fish, and let's cut over to Ewan McGregor and his film, Big Fish. Ewan McGregor takes on a great play here, and it ends up being one of Tim Burton's best films of the 2000s. A film about the beauty and struggle between parents and their kids, along with how we build up our parents as these mythical figures in our minds. It's an incredibly well-directed film, and man, those last 20 minutes just hit you like a truck. If you don't feel anything at the end of Big Fish, congrats, you're dead. A tier. Speaking of dead, Tim Burton's first co-directed film that's going to be on this list is Corpse Bride, which was his directorial foray in claymation. And no, not Nightmare Before Christmas, because we all know he didn't direct that, right? You're on fraud watch if you thought he did. But it feels cruel to end up pitting Corpse Bride against Nightmare Before Christmas when Nightmare Before Christmas is a top 2 Disney movie, and for my money, it's not coming in at 2. Corpse Bride, though, I still think is an extremely good film that I just wish had more time to flesh itself out. It comes in at a tight hour and 15 minutes, and I just wish it had more time for us to get connected to these characters, because by the end, I still didn't really feel like I knew them. But I guess that's a great complaint to have. I just wish there was more of the movie. I wish I could say I liked it more. I'm just not one of those people that loved it. B tier. And the next movie up is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and you might ask, does it go in B tier? Absolutely not. We're throwing that thing right into C tier. Okay, I know I might get some heat with this one. I didn't grow up with this film as a kid, and I know this movie is a polarizing one. Personally, I think it's a visual nightmare anchored by a fun, bizarre performance. But also, I get that a lot of people my age grew up with this film, and nostalgia makes them love it. So I'm not going to dog too much on this movie, because I have a ton of friends who have already come after me for saying that I am an idiot for not liking this movie. And I get it, film is subjective, but this film is going nowhere. Now our next film up is Sweeney Todd. And this is the worst part of the video, because I have to admit I love the play of Sweeney Todd. And is this the part of the video where I have to admit that I love theater? No, you never heard that. Forget that. Watch this Kobe montage real quick. See, I'm one of the boys. No, but I do love theater, and Sweeney Todd is one of my favorite plays. It's got this delightful darkness and maturity for such a fun premise, and it's just this gross, meaty revenge story that I just adore. So a Tim Burton adaptation of one of my favorite plays, it's gonna be a banger, right? And yeah, it's really good. I think if you want a right down the center fastball of a good adaptation of this play in an easily consumable form, this is it. I could go full nerd on this and say, oh, I wish there was a better actor for Sweeney Todd because I've seen other singers elevate the performance, which is true. or how I feel like the film really sidelines Judge Turpin for a while he's a bigger part of the play. Still though, at the end of the day, I don't really care. It's an extremely well directed Sweeney Todd film that's tightly under 2 hours, and it's pretty good. Still though, I'd rather see a live performance of this play any day of the week. If it's near you, go watch it. It is such a fun play. B tier. But let's go from one Johnny Depp performance to another, because our next film is Alice in Wonderland. And I know, some people like this movie, and get those people mental help immediately. I think this might be one of the ugliest films I've seen in my entire life. Just on a stylistic standpoint, everything in this movie just looks off and made my skin crawl. Everything is in this uncanny valley, and it is just so strange. Like those little Tweedledee and Tweedledum, they just make me feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, I could not take my eyes away from this film. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and for that alone, it keeps it out of F tier. I enjoyed watching this movie so much more than Planet of the Apes, so this gets top of D tier because man, what a bizarre nightmare, and I am so intrigued to go back to it. Speaking of D tier though, Dark Shadows. I don't think there's been a movie more systematically made to be deleted from your memory. This is just a film I don't care about at all. Uninspired visuals throughout, a tone that feels so lost and out of place, especially when we got other vampire films like 2 years later, like What We Do in the Shadows, which were so creative and innovative, and this film just feels like it is lagging so far behind. I don't hate this film, it's just a film that I don't remember at all, and it goes at the bottom of D tier for Timmy Burton. But our next film has to be good, right? It's got a dead dog. Frankenweenie might be the most unfriendly kid movie ever made. Never have I seen a film kill a dog twice in a movie. That is insane. And this is a film that doesn't work perfectly as a kid's movie. Most of the film is working off the thematic ideas of accepting death and the pain that comes with loss and loneliness, but then the actual story in the film itself is surprisingly melodramatic. Victor ends up trying not to get his science fair stolen, and then there's a Godzilla from a wrong experiment, and I don't care. It just wasn't a film that I was able to engage with throughout, even though I liked what it was trying to do on an overall thematic level. But the reason it's going into C tier is because the DVD fast play of this as a kid scared me. On to the next one. Here's another C tier for a completely different reason, Big Eyes. This is a drama film with none of the style of Tim Burton's films, and in some ways I really respect that. He tries a new style with a refrain looked into a family drama, but the material is too generic for a removal of his style to justify. It's got good performances from two studs, but it just is a very forgettable film in his filmography. And unless you're binge watching all of his films and want to see how in this film he metacontextually breaks down his style and his directing career, you could skip it. Miss Peregrine is up next, and this one's going to be an easy review because this movie is poo-poo. The first half is like a mediocre X-Men or Umbrella Academy, and the second half is a terrible movie with Slenderman, but it is very funny. So if you want a decent generic YA film, in the first half you got it, and in the back half you got a horrendous movie. So if you like bad movies, I guess this film's kind of fun to watch. But let's throw it over to the expert on the books this film is adapted from, which is my mom. She loved these books, and as a teen, I saw her constantly checking out these books from the library, and her opinion on the film was that she could only get through half of this movie. C tier. But we're almost at the finish line. I don't want to lose you here because let's talk about Dumbo, and trust me, this is a really interesting remake I want to talk about. You might not know this, but this is the most insane Disney remake ever. No, seriously, if you haven't seen this film, I'd recommend you go watch it even though it's not that good. Tim Burton takes the classic Disney film that put them on the map and remakes it completely differently, so it ends up critiquing corporate America and ends with a Walt Disney stand-in watching Disneyland burn to the ground. This is a movie made by a madman who has lost his marbles, and the movie outside of this is very boring, but I gotta respect him for absolutely crashing out for no reason. C tier. And then finally we end with his latest film, Beetlejuice. I've made a whole video on this one, but I like it. I still think it's a good movie, and it would be a crime to put this film anywhere but B tier. And that is every Tim Burton film reviewed and ranked. Would I recommend you do this? Honestly, I wouldn't say no. The video got delayed because I didn't realize how many films Timmy had made, and it did take me a while to get through them all, but I had a great time doing it. He's got some incredible highs in his filmography, and overall, I think for the majority, his batting average is really good. He is a unique visionary, and as a kid, he was one of the few directors where I could tell instantly when it was his style. And I know it's not a large concept, but as a kid that meant a lot, and I will always forever respect that he constantly is working and that he's made some of the most iconic films ever made. Has he sold out at points to make films that aren't great? Sure, but overall, I still think his artistic vision has always been there. Anyways, I love making these director retrospectives. I got another one though in the works, and when that comes out, I'll see you guys then. Bye.